On December 24th, 2008 in Covina, California, a family would have a get-together to celebrate the holidays. At approximately 11:30 p.m., an 8-year-old girl would hear a knock at the door. At this point, the party was already ending. Nevertheless, the little girl ran down the hallway excited. When she opened the door, Santa himself stood outside. Before she had a chance to express her excitement, he pulled out a gun, shooting her directly in the face. Immediately following this, a second girl would be shot directly in the back. Before I continue, I'd like a chance to say if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing and pressing the like button. Darker cases such as this have a hard time on YouTube, so doing so helps this video in the algorithm. One more thing, if you have a topic or case you'd like to see me cover, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And with that, let's continue. Later on, it would be discovered that Santa was 45-year-old Bruce Jeffrey Pardo. This man was the soon-to-be ex-husband of Sylvia Pardo, who was at the party. Bruce had grown up in the San Fernando Valley during the 1970s, showing he had a gift for math even as a child. Later in his 20s, he had gotten a job as a software engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It was there he would meet a coworker named Delia, who he eventually would become engaged to. However, on their wedding day, he never showed up. Bruce had stolen the remaining money from their joint bank account and fled to Palm Springs. Fast forward to 2001, Bruce was living with his new girlfriend and their 13-month-old son, Bruce Matthew. One day, while Bruce was watching TV, Matthew would fall into their backyard swimming pool and nearly drown. Doctors would later determine that the young child would have severe brain damage. Matthew was left paraplegic after the incident. After learning this, Bruce would abandon the child and his mother, never speaking to or providing them with financial assistance. Despite not supporting his son, Bruce would still claim Matthew as a tax deduction. 3 years later, Bruce would meet Sylvia Orza. After the two got married, they would buy a 3-bedroom house for over $500,000. After 1 year of marriage, Bruce would become cold and distant. In late 2007, Sylvia would learn of Matthew, something he never told her. A few months later, the couple would separate. Bruce would be ordered by a judge to pay nearly $2,000 a month to Sylvia in spousal support. However, his first check to her would bounce and he would not send a second. Then, on June 13th of 2008, he would begin planning mass murder. On that day, he would pay nearly $1,000 for a 9mm handgun. A little over a month later, on July 31st, Bruce would be fired from his job for billing fraudulent hours. He applied for unemployment but was ineligible. On August 8th, he would purchase a second 9mm handgun and a third on September 8th. That same day in September, he would order a Santa Claus costume from his neighbor, who was the owner of a nearby costume shop. Bruce paid a $200 deposit on the outfit, promising to return it in November. After this, he would buy 2 more handguns, one in October and the second in November. As an explanation for the gaps, California residents are limited to buying 1 firearm once every 30 days. Around this time, he would visit an old friend in Iowa. After telling his friend about getting fired and his divorce, he would leave town, buying 16 magazines for his handguns. From this point, he would return to California and pick up his Santa costume. Later in December, Bruce would have a court hearing with his wife where he would agree to pay her $10,000. On December 19th, he would purchase a plane ticket to Canada. From here, he would rent 2 cars, a Toyota and a Dodge Caliber. With the Toyota, he would fill the vehicle with maps of the US and Mexico, as well as water, food, clothes, gasoline, and a laptop. 5 days later on Christmas Eve, he would park the Toyota near the home of his wife's attorney. Police would later theorize that he planned to kill the attorney after committing mass murder. That same night, he would use cocaine, leave his home, and inform his neighbor that he was off to a Christmas party. It was here that he would drive to the party, knock on the door, and shoot the young girl in the face. Although she would survive the shot, Bruce would continue, shooting rapidly at other partygoers. Several would be shot. At this point, it is theorized by police that Bruce walked towards his victims, shooting them in the head execution style. In total, 9 people would die from the attacks. In a pure act of terror, he would then remove a package he'd brought containing a homemade device akin to a flamethrower. Rather than shooting flames, it would spray gasoline, which he would then use to soak the bodies of his victims as well as the house. A few seconds later, the house would be lit on fire. This part of his plan wasn't intentional, at least not so soon. It is thought by police that either a lit candle or a pilot light set the blaze. His plan was to use a flare to light the fuel. Either way, the ensuing fire would leave the flesh, bone, and blood of his in-laws to be burnt to a crisp. The same fuel would eventually reach 2 fireplaces, causing an explosion. During this time, a 20-year-old woman would jump from the second-story window to escape the blazing flames, subsequently breaking her ankle in the process. Bruce's rampage would continue on. Before his attack, he had taped $17,000 and a plane ticket to Canada to his leg. After his killing spree, he was planning to flee the country. Unfortunately for Bruce, the fire had left him with third-degree burns. The blaze was so hot, the Santa suit melted to his flesh. The family members who had escaped his murderous rage called police, who then arrived on scene moments later. Over the next half an hour, over 100 firefighters would work vigorously to put out the flames. By this time, Bruce was long gone. He had traveled miles away to his brother's house. Due to the third-degree burns he suffered, he decided not to flee the country. It was at this point that he took one of his handguns, put it inside his mouth, and pulled the trigger. A bullet would travel through his skull and into his brain, ending his life. At around 3:30 a.m., police would be called to the residence where they would find his body, blood pooling on the ground from his gunshot wound. Outside the house, police would find the car that Bruce had rented before the attack. Upon inspecting the vehicle, they would find 300 rounds of ammunition, black powder, and a rigged pipe bomb. A bomb squad was immediately called. However, they were unsuccessful in disarming the device and the car exploded. Luckily, no one was harmed with the explosion. In the end, 13 children from the mass murder would be left orphaned, and Los Angeles would consider this to be the worst mass murder in decades.